Warm welcome, audience. What's time there from where you watching it? From the moment Achilles drew his first breath in the kingdom of Thea, the threads of destiny wove a tapestry of heroism and tragedy around him. Born to Peleus, the mighty king, and Thetis, the sea goddess whose beauty and power rivaled that of the ocean itself, Achilles was fated for greatness, yet shadowed by an inescapable doom that even gods dared not challenge lightly. From his earliest days, his mother sensed the duality within him, a warrior unmatched in skill, yet vulnerable to the cruelest whims of fate. The palace walls echoed with the laughter and cries of his infancy, each sound carrying the promise of a future both glorious and sorrowful. As he grew, his form became that of a warrior sculpted by divine hands, muscles honed, eyes piercing, every gesture and movement radiating power and grace. Thetis, fearing the prophecy that foretold her son's early death if he lived a long life of glory, hid him in secret places, attempting to shield him from the threads of destiny. Yet destiny, as it always does, found its path. In the halls of Myrmidons, Achilles trained with unmatched ferocity. The clashing of bronze and the sharp crack of whips against shields became the rhythm of his youth. No warrior, mortal or demigod, could match the speed and precision of his strikes. Yet even in victory, there was a temper in Achilles' heart of fire that could flare at the slightest insult or injustice. His father, Peleus, sought to temper this passion with wisdom, but the blood of gods ran in his veins, and the mortal world often failed to contain the tempest within him. Among mentors and warriors, he learned the arts of war, yet Thetis, ever watchful, whispered to him the lessons of foresight and caution, though Achilles' heart often rebelled, yearning for the thrill of battle, the glory of heroic deeds, and the eternal honor that would make his name immortal. The moment came when news of Troy's rising power reached the Greek kings, a city fortified by walls. No ordinary army could breach, ruled by Priam, a king both wise and cunning, and protected by warriors who rivaled Achilles himself in courage. The call for heroes echoed through the Greek world, and Achilles, though young, felt the stirrings of destiny beckoning him toward a path from which there would be no return. The Myrmidons prepared to sail, and the scent of salt and brine filled the air as ships were readied for the perilous journey. Across the Aegean Sea, Achilles' heart surged with excitement and fear alike, knowing that glory awaited, but at a cost that even the bravest soul could scarcely imagine. Before departure, Thetis, torn between pride and sorrow, attempted once more to sway him. She presented the choice of a long, quiet life in obscurity, or a brief, immortal life etched forever in song and memory. Achilles, in the audacity of youth, chose the latter, his eyes alight with ambition and the desire for honor. The Myrmidons, loyal and fearless, followed him, their loyalty a mirror to his own fiery spirit, ready to face the fury of the Trojan wars, the cunning of Hector, and the wrath of gods who often interfered in mortal affairs. The sea gods, the winds, and even Zeus himself watched with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension, for the coming years would test not only the body of Achilles, but the soul and the very essence of his being. The journey to Troy was not merely a passage across water, but a journey through destiny, temptation, and the shadow of mortality. On board the ships, Achilles reflected on the lessons of his childhood, the guidance of Chiron the centaur who had taught him the arts of healing, archery, and strategy, and the tales of past heroes whose fates intertwined glory and sorrow in inseparable bonds. He saw in the horizon the promise of fame, but also the foreboding shadow of death. For the omens whispered that Troy would be both the stage of his triumphs and the arena of his greatest suffering. Every night, as fires flickered against the wooden decks, Achilles' thoughts wandered to the gods and the roles they played in human affairs. Athena, ever watchful, offered wisdom in the quiet hours, while Apollo, patron of prophecy and plague, cast shadows of warning upon the fleet. And yet, the fire in Achilles' heart burned brighter than any fear. Each star above seemed to call his name, each wave of the Aegean a drumbeat for the hero's destiny. As the coastline of Troy emerged on the horizon, massive and foreboding, Achilles' pulse quickened. The walls of the city, towering and unyielding, were a challenge to his prowess, a test he welcomed with a mixture of arrogance and honor. Among his comrades, Achilles' presence inspired awe and fear alike. His very shadow seemed to carry the weight of impending greatness. Patroclus, his closest friend and confidant, stood beside him, a steadying force in the storm of Achilles' ambition and temper. Together, they shared both laughter and the quiet sorrow of understanding the fragile thread upon which life and death balanced. As the ships landed on Trojan shores, the Myrmidons disembarked with a resolve that rivaled the fiercest storms, each man ready to write his name in the annals of history. Guided by the indomitable spirit of Achilles, whose destiny was as brilliant and tragic as the sun, rising over the battlefield. Thus began the long shadow of war, a tale that would see heroes rise and fall, gods intervene and withdraw, and the mortal heart tested in ways both terrible and divine. Achilles, standing at the edge of Troy, felt the weight of choice, the fire of ambition, and the undeniable truth that while glory awaited him, so did the inexorable hand of fate that would one day claim him. And yet with a fearless heart and a spirit unyielding, he stepped forward ready to carve his story into eternity, knowing that every strike of sword and every clash of shield would echo, long after the winds silenced the cries of men and the dust of battle settled upon the earth. The sun rose over the plains of Troy, casting long shadows across the golden sands and the fortified walls that held the city like a guardian of fate. Achilles, standing atop a ridge overlooking the battlefield, felt the tremor of destiny in every gust of wind. The Myrmidons, his loyal companions, moved with disciplined precision, their armor gleaming and swords sharp, reflecting the fire of ambition and fearlessness that radiated from their leader. The drums of war echoed faintly from within the city, the clanging of gates and the rallying cries of Trojan warriors a reminder that no mortal ambition could escape the gaze of fate. Yet Achilles' heart, ablaze with a desire for glory, welcomed the challenge. For every step closer to Troy was a step deeper into the song of legends that would forever remember him. The city of Troy was alive with vigilance. From the ramparts, Hector, prince of the Trojans, observed the Greek fleet, his gaze calculating and steady, aware of the peril that approached. In his mind, he balanced courage and strategy, knowing that Achilles, young yet unmatched in ferocity, posed a threat that could turn the tide of battle. The walls of Troy, built from ancient stone and reinforced by generations of warriors, seemed invincible. Yet the heart of a hero can often surpass even the mightiest of fortresses. Achilles, sensing both the strength and vulnerability of his adversaries, prepared not only for battle, but for the glory that comes from triumph over worthy foes. The very air seemed to hum with tension, charged with the energy of approaching conflict, each heartbeat in the Greek camp, drumbeat to the march of destiny. Among the Myrmidons, whispers of Achilles' prowess traveled like wildfire. No soldier doubted that their leader was destined for greatness, yet even admiration carried with it the weight of fear. He struck swiftly, with precision honed from years of training under Chiron, the wise centaur who had shaped his youth with lessons of both combat and wisdom. His movements were fluid, yet explosive, his strikes like lightning cleaving through the air, each one leaving an impression not only on his enemies, but on the very fabric of memory. Patroclus remained close, a steadying force to balance the intensity of Achilles' nature. Their bond, forged in childhood and strengthened through countless battles, was a shield against the loneliness of destiny, a tether to humanity in the face of the godlike expectations. Surrounding Achilles, the first clashes erupted at dawn. Greek and Trojan warriors collided with the force of storms, spears clashing against shields, swords singing through the air. Achilles, at the forefront, moved like a whirlwind, his every strike deadly, his courage unshakable. Trojans fell before him, their walls trembling not from stone alone, but from the fury of a hero whose name would echo for centuries. Yet even in the midst of triumph, a shadow lingered in his heart, a knowledge that each victory brought him closer to the fateful end his mother had feared. Blood stained the sands, cries of the fallen rose like a chorus of warning, and still Achilles pressed onward, driven by honor, pride, and the desire to secure a legacy unmatched in mortal history. The gods watched with keen interest. Athena, patron of strategy and wisdom, guided the hands of the Greeks, whispering counsel to both mortal and warrior. Her influence subtle yet decisive. Apollo, favoring the Trojans, cast plagues upon the Greek camp, testing their endurance, while Zeus weighed the scales of fate with impartiality. knowing that even the mightiest hero could not escape destiny. Despite divine interventions, Achilles' brilliance on the battlefield shone, his speed and skill unmatched, each maneuver a testament to years of training and the spark of divinity within him. As the day wore on, the city of Troy trembled beneath the onslaught. Yet the fight was far from over, for every wall breached and warrior felt strengthened the resolve of those who would defend their home with unmatched courage. Amid the chaos, Hector and Achilles glimpsed each other across the field, a silent acknowledgement passing between them. To warriors equally valiant, destined to shape each other's fates, recognized the inevitability of their confrontation. The anticipation of their meeting carried a weight heavier than shields or spears. It was the burden of legacy, of honor, and the relentless march of destiny. Meanwhile, in the Greek camp, Patroclus worked tirelessly to support the Myrmidons, tending to wounds and bolstering morale, his loyalty unwavering, his presence a balm to the storm of battle surrounding them. Even as victories accumulated, Achilles felt the stirrings of conflict within. His pride, fiery and unyielding, sometimes clashed with reason. His anger, fierce and uncontrollable, threatened to isolate him from allies who feared both his brilliance and his temper. Yet every misstep, every spark of wrath, also forged him into a figure of legendary strength, a hero whose name would transcend mortal memory. The sun began to dip low, casting long, crimson shadows across the field, and still Achilles fought on, tireless, relentless, his mind a blend of strategy and instinct, his body a weapon honed by both human training and divine favor. As night fell, the battlefield quieted, though tension remained thick in the air. Warriors on both sides tended to their wounds, repaired armor, and prepared for the next day's trials. Achilles, standing amidst the fading echoes of combat, reflected upon the nature of heroism and mortality. The path of glory, he realized, was intertwined with suffering, loss, and the inexorable approach of fate. And yet in the quiet moments before the stars took their place in the heavens, he allowed himself a flicker of hope, a brief sense of triumph, knowing that his deeds both in war and in courage would live on long after Troy fell silent and the dust of battle settled into memory. This is Chapter 2, fully descriptive, continuing the epic build-up of Achilles' role in the Trojan War, his relationship with Patroclus, and the divine interference shaping events. The war for Troy stretched on, days and nights blending into one relentless rhythm of blood, strategy, and unyielding courage. Achilles' presence on the battlefield became a force unto itself. His name whispered among soldiers on both sides, carried like fire through the ranks. Each dawn, he rose with purpose, the weight of destiny heavy upon his shoulders, yet the fire of ambition and pride in his heart unquenchable. The Myrmidons moved as one with him, their loyalty unwavering, their strikes precise. Each man knowing that to follow Achilles was to dance at the edge of mortal and divine boundaries. The clash of spears, the cries of the wounded, and the thundering of hooves created a symphony of chaos, a stage upon which legends were written in blood and valor. Within the walls of Troy, Hector's resolve remained steadfast. He moved among his men like a pillar of courage, inspiring them with his own brand of honor and determination. Yet the shadow of Achilles loomed larger with every passing day, a specter of death and glory that no mortal could ignore. Every skirmish brought him closer to the inevitable encounter, a duel that both warriors sensed was fated, a confrontation that would shape the course of the war and etch their names into eternity. As the Greeks pressed forward, breaching outer defenses and testing the walls of Troy, Achilles' brilliance became more apparent. His strategy, instinct, and unmatched skill turned every clash into a testament of heroism. Yet every victory also carried the whisper of mortality, a reminder of the prophecy his mother had once feared. The bond between Achilles and Patroclus deepened with every battle. Patroclus, ever loyal, shared both the triumphs and the silent sorrows of the hero's heart. Together, they witnessed the toll of war, the cost of glory measured not in accolades but in the lives of men. Achilles' rage, when provoked, became a storm, yet Patroclus' presence often tempered the edge, reminding him of humanity even amidst the divine currents that pulled him toward destiny. Conversations in the quiet hours revealed glimpses of the man behind the warrior, a soul seeking meaning, honor, and the enduring remembrance of deeds both noble and fearsome. Divine intervention remained ever present. Athena's counsel guided tactical maneuvers, subtly influencing outcomes without stripping mortals of choice. Apollo's favor blessed Troy with moments of resistance, reminding Greeks that even the mightiest hero must contend with forces beyond mortal control. Zeus, observing all, balanced fate and free will with careful impartiality, knowing that the threads of destiny were tightly wound around Achilles, yet never fully predictable. The hero, aware of these unseen forces, sometimes felt both emboldened and constrained, a mortal shaped by divine hands, yet determined to carve his own path across the sands of Troy. The battles grew fiercer as the Greeks pressed closer to the city's heart. Every day brought fresh trials, ambushes, duels, and the cunning maneuvers of Trojan warriors testing both skill and will. Achilles' reputation as an invincible force spread among friend and foe alike. His strikes became almost mythic. Arrows and spears fell before him like raindrops. Shields shattered under his blows, and every enemy who met him on the battlefield found courage tested against the unstoppable. Yet even as he triumphed, the quiet moments revealed the weight of prophecy pressing upon him, and knowledge that each victory was a step closer to the fate that awaited, a reminder that heroism and death were inseparably entwined. The first true storm of war came when a massive siege threatened to engulf both sides in chaos. Fire and smoke consumed the horizon as Greek and Trojan forces collided in a maelstrom of courage, desperation, and strategy. Achilles, at the center, moved with a terrifying grace, his sword ablur, his voice commanding, his presence turning the tide of battle again and again. Patroclus fought beside him, protecting both men and men's hearts, the loyalty between them a beacon amidst the brutality. Even the gods watched in awe, their whispers across the winds guiding actions, warning of dangers, yet never intervening directly, allowing the mortals to confront both glory and doom on their own terms. As night fell on the battlefield, the aftermath of devastation painted a grim portrait. The dead and wounded were tended to, walls repaired, and morale rebuilt. Yet the spirit of war remained unbroken. Achilles, standing amidst the fallen and victorious alike, reflected on the nature of courage and the fragile line between heroism and hubris. His heart, fierce and unyielding, felt both the satisfaction of triumph and the sorrow of inevitable loss. Each clash, each step, each life taken or spared was a note in the symphony of destiny, a melody only the gods and the brave could fully comprehend. The anticipation of a direct confrontation with Hector grew heavier with every passing day. Both warriors, aware of the other's skill and honor, understood that when the time came, it would not be merely a battle, but a legend in motion, a duel where the threads of fate, glory, and mortality intertwined in ways no mortal could fully escape. Meanwhile, Achilles continued to inspire the Greek army, a figure larger than life, yet anchored by the loyalty of Patroclus and the unwavering discipline of the Myrmidons. Every action, every decision, every strike of sword and shield carried the weight of legacy, echoing across the plains and into the stories yet to be sung in halls and temples for centuries to come. Thus, as the moon rose over the war-torn fields of Troy, casting silver light upon both victory and ruin, Achilles remained vigilant, unstoppable, and resolute. The battlefield was both his proving ground and his destiny, a place where courage and prophecy collided. And though the end of his story still lay shrouded in fate's shadow, every heartbeat, every strike, and every choice carried him closer to the legendary glory that would make his name immortal among both mortals and gods alike. This is Chapter 3, fully descriptive, building tension, depicting the intensity of the Trojan War, and preparing the legendary duel between Achilles and Hector. If you want, I can continue with Chapter 4, where the story escalates further with Hector's confrontation and pivotal moments in the war. The war raged on, relentless and unforgiving, as the Greeks and Trojans clashed beneath the unyielding sun. Every battlefield was a theater of heroism and tragedy, where the cries of the fallen mingled with the roar of courage, each day etching itself into the fabric of history. Achilles, tireless and resolute, led the Myrmidons with a force that seemed almost supernatural. His every movement radiated authority and precision, a testament to years of training under Chiron and the divine spark inherited from his mother. Thetis, soldiers looked to him not merely as a leader, but as an embodiment of destiny itself, a hero, whose path had been carved long before the first arrows flew. From the high walls of Troy, Hector watched the tide of battle with unyielding determination. The weight of his city rested upon his shoulders, the fate of his people intertwined with his own courage and skill. Each encounter with the Greeks, each repelled assault, strengthened his resolve yet reminded him of the unstoppable force that Achilles represented. He knew that the day would come when their paths would cross in a confrontation that could decide the war and seal the fates of both men. Until that moment, Hector moved with wisdom and strategy, his leadership inspiring the Trojans to hold firm, to fight not just for land, but for honor, family, and the survival of their city. Amid the chaos, Achilles' presence became more legendary with each passing clash. Mortals and demigods alike spoke in hushed tones of his speed, strength, and cunning. He moved like a whirlwind across the battlefield, cutting down foes with skill and precision that seemed preordained, a force that both terrified and inspired. Yet beneath the armor and the fury, his mind was constantly aware of the prophecy that shadowed his life. The promise of glory carried with it the certainty of mortality, a weight he bore with both pride and an occasional, fleeting sorrow. His relationship with Patroclus deepened further in these times, their camaraderie a vital anchor amidst the storm of war. Patroclus, loyal beyond measure, tempered Achilles' anger and reminded him of the humanity he might otherwise forget in pursuit of. Eternal fame, the gods, ever vigilant, continued their subtle manipulations. Athena whispered counsel into Achilles' mind, guiding movements and strategy without stripping him of choice. Apollo favored the Trojans, sending omens and plagues to test the Greeks' resolve, while Zeus observed impartially, weighing mortal courage against the inevitability of fate. The battlefield became a canvas not only for human heroism but for divine influence. Every decision a brushstroke shaped by both skill and unseen forces. And through it all, Achilles pressed forward, unyielding, his eyes fixed on the horizon where Troy's walls loomed, each day bringing him closer to the destiny he had chosen. The siege intensified. Fires consumed portions of the outskirts, and the clash of swords and shields created a symphony of chaos that could be heard for miles. Achilles' strikes were devastating. He moved with an energy and focus that seemed unending. Trojans fell before him, yet each victory was a reminder of the inevitable meeting with Hector. Their duel, unspoken yet understood by both, loomed over every skirmish, every strategy, and every movement. Of the war, soldiers whispered of it, fearful and awed in equal measure, knowing that the day the two warriors met would be a day remembered for all time. In quieter moments, Achilles contemplated the paradox of his existence, a mortal endowed with divine talent, destined for glory, yet fated to die young. These reflections never diminished his courage. If anything, they sharpened his resolve. Every battle, every fallen soldier, every conquered position was both a step toward fame and a reminder of life's fleeting nature. Patroclus remained his confidant, offering perspective, support, and the rare gift of calm amidst relentless fury. Together, they navigated the storm of war, their bond a humanizing force that grounded Achilles even as he became larger than life. In the eyes of all who beheld him, as the day drew to a close, the battlefield quieted only momentarily. The fires burned low, and warriors tended to wounds and repaired armor, yet tension lingered thickly in the air. Each side knew that the next day could bring further devastation, and for Achilles, each sunrise was a reminder that his destiny waited not far ahead. He gazed across the plains toward Troy's gates, imagining the inevitable duel with Hector, knowing that both glory and sorrow awaited in that fateful confrontation. The Myrmidons, loyal and steadfast, gathered around him, ready for whatever challenges the next day would bring, trusting in the hero who would become the living embodiment of courage and destiny. Night fell over the battlefield, stars shining cold and distant above. While Achilles contemplated the future, the shadow of fate loomed, but so did the promise of immortal renown. Every decision, every strike, every heroic act carried him forward along the path he had chosen, a path that intertwined glory with tragedy, courage with mortality. and human will with divine design, and in the stillness of night with the fires casting flickering light across the war-torn plains, Achilles prepared himself for the trials yet to come, resolute, fearless, and aware that the story of his life would echo for generations, immortalized in song, tale, and memory. The sun rose once more over the plains surrounding Troy, painting the battlefield in shades of gold and crimson, as if the heavens themselves were bearing witness to the fates being written below. Achilles stood at the forefront of his forces, the Myrmidons ready and unwavering, each man inspired by the unyielding courage and raw power of their leader. The air carried the scent of sweat, dust, and blood, mingled with the distant perfume of olive groves and the salty tang of the Aegean winds. Every heartbeat of the army pulsed with anticipation, for the presence of Achilles transformed the field into more than a battleground. It became a stage where destiny itself was to be performed. Trojan scouts reported the movements of the Greeks, their messages carried swiftly to Hector, who readied the city's defenders with a strategic mind and the pride of a warrior, who had never known defeat in courage if not in circumstance. He moved among his men, encouraging them with words that blended honor, fearlessness, and the inevitability of war. Yet even Hector could not ignore the overwhelming shadow cast by Achilles, whose reputation had grown to almost mythic proportions. Stories of his speed, skill, and merciless prowess reached Troy, even before the clash of swords, seeding both dread and respect among soldiers who faced him. Across the open plains, the battles of this day were unlike any before. Spears and arrows flew in a relentless torrent, the clash of bronze and iron echoing like thunder across the fields. Achilles moved with precision and speed that no mortal could hope to match, cutting down warriors in a pattern so fluid it seemed choreographed by the gods themselves. Yet beneath the power and fury, his mind was alive with calculation. Every movement, every decision was guided not merely by instinct, but by foresight shaped from years of training, counsel from Chiron, and the subtle guidance of Athena. His eyes scanned the battlefield continuously, not only for enemies, but for opportunities small, moments that could turn the tide, protect allies, or bring him closer to the ultimate confrontation with Hector. Patroclus remained steadfast at Achilles' side, a constant presence amidst the chaos, tending to the wounded, bolstering morale, and reminding Achilles of the human cost of war. Their friendship was a rare tether of loyalty and humanity, grounding the hero whose name would otherwise be defined solely by bloodshed and triumph. Every shared glance and whispered word reinforced the bond between them, a quiet strength that allowed Achilles to balance the storm of wrath and ambition within him. Without Patroclus, even the mightiest hero could falter. With him, Achilles' legend burned brighter, tempered by loyalty and understanding. The gods continued their watchful intervention. Athena's whispers guided Achilles' tactics subtly, her presence unseen yet undeniable, shaping the hero's movements and choices in ways that mortals could never fully comprehend. Apollo, favoring the Trojans, unleashed plagues and omens, testing the Greeks' endurance and resilience, reminding all that mortal valor alone was never sufficient in the eyes of divine forces. Even Zeus, impartial and observing from his throne above Olympus, weighed the scales of fate with careful attention, knowing that the mortal hero's glory would inevitably intertwine with tragedy. Achilles, aware yet undaunted, moved as if propelled by destiny itself, his fury and skill a living testament to the delicate balance of mortal courage and divine influence. As the day wore on, the intensity of the battle escalated. Trojan forces, resilient and cunning, mounted fierce counterattacks, forcing the Greeks to adapt, regroup, and fight with all their skill. Yet no matter the challenge, Achilles' presence dominated the field. His strikes, swift and decisive, inspired awe in friends and fear in foes. The very sight of him moving through the chaos, enough to shift the morale of armies. His wrath, when unleashed, became a tempest, his courage, a guiding light, and his skill, an unstoppable force shaping the very course of the war. By mid-afternoon, the fated encounter that had been anticipated for so long drew nearer. Scouts brought word of Hector's maneuvers, positioning himself with strategic brilliance to defend Troy. While preparing for the duel he knew was inevitable, Achilles' pulse quickened, not from fear but from the anticipation of glory. The moment of reckoning approached. the convergence of destiny and mortal will that would define both men forever. The battlefield, scarred with the footprints of heroes and the fallen, became the silent witness to a legend on the brink of manifestation, even as the sun began its descent, casting long shadows over the war-torn plains. Achilles' thoughts were fixed not only on the battles yet to come, but on the legacy that awaited him. Every fallen foe, every heroic act, every intervention by gods and men alike was a thread in the tapestry of his destiny. And as the Myrmidons gathered around him, ready to follow their leader into the storm of war, once more Achilles understood with clarity that his life brief, yet brilliant, would be immortalized not merely in the annals of history, but in song tale and memory for generations yet unborn. Thus, as twilight fell over Troy, the air thick with the smoke and scent of battle, Achilles prepared for what was to come, unwavering, unstoppable, and aware that the legend he was forging would transcend mortality itself. The stage was set, the forces aligned, and the inexorable hand of fate was drawing both hero and city toward the defining moments that would forever link their names in the eternal story of war, courage, and destiny. The morning light broke over Troy, illuminating a battlefield carved by the blood and courage of men, a stage set for destiny itself. Achilles, the unstoppable force of the Greek army, stood at the forefront, his armor gleaming like sunlight upon the sea, a beacon of both fear and hope. The Myrmidons, trained in unshakable loyalty and battle-hardened skill, surrounded him, moving as one with the rhythm of their leader's will. Every heartbeat of the army resonated with anticipation. For the duel with Hector, the confrontation long foretold was drawing near, a moment that would forever alter the course of the war and immortalize the hero's name. Hector, resolute and unyielding, prepared the Trojans with meticulous care. Every wall, every formation, every reserve of archers and spearmen was positioned with strategic precision, reflecting both his skill as a commander and the weight of his responsibility. The shadow of Achilles, whose presence had haunted the city from the first day of battle, now loomed larger than ever, a force that demanded both courage and cunning to oppose. Every Trojan soldier understood the stakes. The clash between these two warriors would decide not just personal glory, but the fate of their city, their families, and their people. As the armies advanced toward one another, the ground trembled beneath the march of thousands. Spears glinted in the sunlight, shields formed an unbroken wall of determination, and the cries of warriors mingled with the distant, ominous whispers of the gods. Achilles, moving with unmatched speed and precision, struck first, cutting through the outer ranks of Troy's defenders. His sword flashed like lightning, each movement a deadly dance of skill and instinct honed through years of training and divine guidance. Patroclus remained close, a steady presence amidst the chaos, tending to the wounded and reinforcing the courage of the men who followed their leader into the storm. The battle raged with fury unmatched, each moment more intense than the last. Greek and Trojan soldiers fell in waves, their blood soaking the earth, yet neither side yielded. Achilles' wrath became a force of nature. Every swing of his sword, every calculated strike, left an indelible mark upon the field. The gods watched closely, some guiding, some obstructing, their divine presence shaping the conflict while never fully removing the human element. Apollo sent omens and plagues to challenge the Greeks, while Athena whispered counsel to Achilles, sharpening his mind and reflexes even as his body carried out the decisive actions that would define the day. Hector, aware that confrontation with Achilles was inevitable, positioned himself with both courage and tactical brilliance. He moved among his men, bolstering morale with a mixture of stern command and inspiring example. Yet the knowledge of Achilles' invincibility in battle weighed heavily upon him. Each clash, each engagement, was a test of both skill and endurance, and each failed attempt to overcome the Greek hero deepened the tension that pulsed across the battlefield. The city of Troy, fortified yet vulnerable, watched and waited, knowing that their prince and the Greek warrior were locked on a path predetermined by fate. Finally, the moment approached when the two champions faced one another directly. The battlefield seemed to fall silent in that instant, as if time itself held its breath. Soldiers on both sides recognized the gravity of the encounter, understanding that this duel would be sung of for generations. Achilles' eyes, fierce and unyielding, locked onto Hector's, and in that gaze lay both challenge and acknowledgement, a recognition of skill, courage, and the inevitability of fate. The earth beneath them trembled with tension, the distant cries of battle fading into the background as the two warriors prepared to engage in a confrontation that would shape the destiny of both men and their armies. The first strikes were lightning quick, each movement of Achilles a blow, each defense of Hector a calculated act of skill and survival. The clash of sword against spear, shield against armor, echoed across the plains, a symphony of valor and danger. Every strike, parry, and maneuver carried the weight of legacy, of personal honor, and of the inexorable currents of destiny. Patroclus watched from a distance, aware that the duel before him was more than combat, it was the embodiment of heroism itself, a meeting of mortal ambition, divine influence, and the heavy hand of fate. Hours passed with unrelenting intensity. The two warriors, evenly matched in courage and skill, pushed each other to the limits of human capability. Yet Achilles' divine favor, his unmatched speed, and the ferocity born of both rage and destiny began to tip the balance. Hector, valiant and resolute, fought with every ounce of strength, aware that the survival of Troy depended upon his prowess, yet unable to overcome the relentless tide of Achilles' skill. Each movement, each counter, each strike was a narrative in itself, a story etched in motion, blood and courage. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows across the battlefield, the duel reached its apex. Achilles, driven by wrath and the desire for immortal glory, landed the decisive blow that would define both his legacy and Hector's fate. The Prince of Troy fell, his body and honor claimed by the hero whose life and legend were inextricably intertwined with the destiny of war. The Myrmidons cheered, the Trojans mourned, and the battlefield became a testament to the brutal reality of fate, courage, and the fleeting nature of mortal life. Yet even in triumph, Achilles felt the weight of what had been done. The prophecy, the knowledge of mortality, and the sorrow of loss tempered his victory. Patroclus approached, offering solace and understanding, a reminder that even heroes were not immune to the burden of consequence. The battlefield, scarred by combat and marked by destiny, bore witness to the turning point of the Trojan War, a moment where glory, mortality, and fate converged in ways both terrible and magnificent. As night fell over Troy, the fires of the city casting flickering light upon the plains, Achilles stood over Hector's body, a hero whose name would be immortalized, yet immortal still bound by the inexorable threads of fate. The stage was set for the final chapters of the war, for vengeance, honor, and the continuation of a story that would echo through eternity. Sung in halls and whispered by bards for generations to come, the death of Hector sent ripples of shock and sorrow throughout Troy. The city, once fortified with the courage of its prince and the unwavering spirit of its people, now trembled beneath the weight of despair. Mothers wept for sons, fathers grieved for heirs, and warriors struggled to reconcile the loss of their greatest champion. Yet even amidst the mourning, the fires of war still burned for Achilles victorious. Yet not untouched by the gravity of his actions, continued to press the Greeks forward relentless, in the pursuit of glory and the inexorable march of destiny. The plains outside Troy became a theater of grief, triumph, and chaos, the blood-soaked earth bearing witness to both human courage and the cruel hand of fate. Achilles' rage, though partially tempered by victory, burned with a fierce intensity that could not be ignored. The hero, aware that his actions had struck a devastating blow to the morale of Troy, also understood the heavy burden of responsibility that accompanied such power. He treated Hector's body with a complex mix of vengeance, respect, and ritual, refusing to allow the enemy to reclaim honor, while asserting his dominance as the unmatched warrior of the Greeks. The Myrmidons, loyal and vigilant, carried out their leader's commands with precision, ensuring that every act reflected both the might of Achilles and the inevitability of fate. Within the walls of Troy, King Priam grieved in private yet summoned courage in public, knowing that the city's survival now rested upon his ability to rally and inspire despite overwhelming loss. Priam's sorrow was tempered by the recognition of Achilles' brilliance. He understood that no mortal, not even Hector, could easily withstand the force of destiny embodied in the Greek hero. The king moved among his people, offering guidance, consolation, and strategy. Aware that the war was far from over, that Achilles' wrath could not be contained, and that the gods continued to shape events from Olympus with subtle, unyielding influence, Patroclus, ever the companion and stabilizing force for Achilles, observed the aftermath with a mixture of relief, sorrow, and foreboding. His presence reminded the hero of his own humanity, offering a tether to compassion and understanding amidst the consuming fires of rage and ambition. Through whispered counsel and shared reflection, Patroclus tempered Achilles' fury, preventing the hero from fully surrendering to wrath alone. Even as the echoes of battle and the cries of the fallen haunted the night, together they navigated the complex currents of honor, vengeance, and destiny. Their bond a reminder that even the greatest of heroes were not immune to the weight of human connection. The gods, watching from above, continued to weave their influence through mortal affairs. Athena, guiding Achilles with subtle counsel, ensured that his path remained aligned with glory while respecting the mortal realm's limits. Apollo, grieving and incensed at Hector's death, stirred both vengeance and reflection among the Trojans, ensuring that the repercussions of Achilles' actions would reverberate through both mortal and divine spheres. Zeus, observing the unfolding drama, maintained a careful balance, knowing that even the greatest hero's fate was bound by threads woven long before birth, and that glory and mortality were inseparable companions in the dance of destiny. The following days were marked by a tense lull in open battle as both Greeks and Trojans regrouped, tended to the wounded, and mourned their losses. Achilles, ever vigilant, reflected on the nature of honor and mortality. His triumph over Hector had cemented his legacy, yet it also weighed upon him, a reminder that the pursuit of glory comes hand in hand with suffering, responsibility, and the relentless approach of fate. The Myrmidons remained by his side, unwavering, ready to follow their leader through whatever trials lay ahead, their loyalty a testament to the bond forged through shared triumph and hardship. Yet even in moments of reflection, the war's shadow remained. The city of Troy, though weakened, was not defeated. The Greeks' path to victory remained uncertain. Filled with unforeseen dangers, cunning strategies, and divine interventions, Achilles, aware of the continuing challenges, balanced his wrath with foresight, preparing for both tactical maneuvers and the inevitable confrontations that destiny had yet to reveal. The weight of prophecy pressed upon him, reminding him that while he was unmatched in battle, he remained mortal, subject to fate, and bound by the consequences of every choice made in pursuit of glory. As night fell once more, over the war-torn plains, the fires of both grief and triumph illuminated the landscape. Achilles, standing among the Myrmidons, contemplated the path ahead, the continuation of the siege, the vengeance yet to be exacted, and the final chapters of his story, which would ultimately define the legacy of the Trojan War. The echoes of Hector's death, the murmurs of the gods, and the enduring presence of fate converged around him, shaping a hero whose name would be immortalized not only through deeds of war, but through the complex tapestry of courage, loss, loyalty, and destiny. The siege of Troy pressed on, unrelenting, as both Greeks and Trojans braced for the battles that would shape the destiny of empires. Achilles, having struck down Hector, now carried the weight of not only his own glory, but the expectations of his army. The murmurs of the gods and the ever-present shadow of fate. Each dawn brought renewed conflict, every clash of swords echoing across the plains like thunder. The Myrmidons, disciplined and fierce, moved as an extension of their leader, their loyalty unwavering, their skill honed to perfection under the unrelenting guidance of the hero who would become a living legend. The death of Hector had left Troy shaken but not broken. King Priam, determined to preserve the heart of the city, rallied his people with courage that belied the despair weighing on his soul. Strategists and warriors alike devised new defenses, fortifying walls, reinforcing gates, and preparing ambushes to slow the inexorable advance of the Greeks. Every corner of the city became a theater of vigilance, every soldier an actor in a play orchestrated by fear, honor, and the looming inevitability of Achilles' return to the battlefield. Even in mourning, Troy's spirit endured, a testament to human resilience in the face of overwhelming odds. Achilles, aware of the delicate balance between rage and reason, began to temper his wrath with strategy. His victories had granted him renown, Yet they also attracted the scrutiny of the gods and the attention of cunning mortals. Patroclus, ever at his side, offered counsel and comfort, a grounding presence amidst the whirlwind of battle. Together, they navigated both the physical and psychological terrain of war. Understanding that triumph required more than brute strength, it demanded foresight, restraint, and an awareness of forces far beyond mortal comprehension. The gods continued to intervene subtly, shaping the course of events without fully removing mortal agency. Athena, guiding Achilles' decisions, provided insight into the tactics of Trojan generals and the vulnerabilities of their defenses. Apollo, still grieving Hector's death, inspired moments of courage and defiance among the Trojans, reminding the Greeks that victory was never guaranteed, no matter the brilliance of their leader. Zeus, observing with impartiality, ensured that the threads of fate continued to wind around Achilles, binding glory and mortality together in a pattern both intricate and inexorable. Amid these developments, the hero's wrath and ambition began to influence both friend and foe. The Myrmidons, inspired by Achilles' relentless courage, struck with precision and determination, overcoming resistance that might have broken lesser armies. Yet the hero's fury, unchecked at times, risked alienating allies and stirring resentment among those who revered him. Patroclus' presence became more vital than ever, his counsel a steadying hand that prevented Achilles from fully succumbing to pride, and vengeance alone, their bond a mixture of loyalty, friendship, and understanding, remained the anchor that allowed the hero to wield his power with purpose and clarity. In the days that followed, the Greeks sought to break the walls of Troy through cunning as well as force. Ambushes, feigned retreats, and nightly raids tested the resolve of both armies. Achilles, ever vigilant, orchestrated these maneuvers with the precision of a master strategist, blending brute strength with calculated planning. Every victory, every maneuver reinforced his reputation as an unstoppable force, a hero whose presence alone could shift the tide of war. Yet with each triumph, the shadow of mortality pressed closer, reminding him that even the greatest hero's path was subject to fate's inexorable design. The tension reached its zenith as Achilles' gaze fell upon the city gates once more. Troy, though weakened, still held defiance within its walls. The hero understood that the ultimate confrontation was not yet complete. More trials awaited. More challenges, both mortal and divine, would test him, and the consequences of his actions were far from fully realized. Patroclus remained by his side, a silent witness to the hero's journey, offering both comfort and counsel as the storm of destiny raged around them. As night fell, casting long shadows over the battered plains, the fires of Troy flickered against the darkness, a symbol of enduring resistance. Achilles, standing amid the Myrmidons, contemplated the next steps in a war that had already immortalized him, yet continued to test the limits of his courage, strategy, and humanity. The whispers of the gods, the echoes of fate, and the weight of glory converged upon him, shaping each decision, each strike, and each movement. The hero's path was clear, yet fraught with peril, the pursuit of eternal honor, the fulfillment of prophecy, and the ever-looming shadow of mortality awaited in the days to come. The war dragged on, each day heavier than the last, the battlefield scarred with the echoes of valor, blood, and grief. Achilles, whose name had become synonymous with both fear and admiration, moved with an intensity that bordered on divine. The Myrmidons followed with unwavering loyalty, their steps synchronized with the rhythm of their leader's will, their hearts beating in tandem with the pulse of destiny itself. Each dawn brought new challenges, skirmishes at the city gates, ambushes in the plains, and subtle schemes orchestrated by the cunning Trojans. Yet through it all, Achilles' focus remained unbroken, his mind a combination of sharp strategy, raw fury, and relentless determination. Within Troy, the walls that had once seemed impregnable now trembled beneath the relentless assaults of the Greeks. Soldiers, inspired by their prince Hector's memory, fought with desperate courage, knowing that the tide had shifted but refusing to surrender. Priam, burdened by grief yet resolute in leadership, moved among his people, offering counsel and consolation, aware that the city's survival now depended on resilience, ingenuity, and the hope that even the greatest hero could be challenged. Every decision, every action, carried the weight of destiny, and the gods continued to weave their subtle influence into the mortal realm. Achilles' wrath, though tempered by strategy and counsel from Patroclus, grew with each encounter. The hero's presence was a force that could topple walls and shatter morale. Yet with every victory, the shadow of prophecy loomed larger. He knew that the path of glory was intertwined with mortality, that every triumph brought him closer to the fate Thetis had feared since his infancy. Patroclus, the ever-faithful companion, reminded him of both the cost and the responsibility inherent in wielding such power. Their bond, forged in youth and strengthened in war, remained the anchor for a hero whose destiny seemed both extraordinary and tragic. The gods, never distant from mortal affairs, continued their quiet interventions. Athena's whispers guided Achilles' decisions with precision, while Apollo inspired the Trojans to resist with courage, ensuring that the war's course remained a delicate balance of mortal effort and divine will. Zeus observed, impartial yet attentive, understanding that Achilles' destiny, though extraordinary, remained bound to the threads of fate woven long before his birth. Even as the hero struck with unmatched skill and speed, he remained subject to forces beyond his control, a mortal whose choices resonated through both human and divine realms. Amid the relentless fighting, Achilles' thoughts often turned inward. He contemplated the nature of honor, the fleetingness of life, and the cost of relentless pursuit of glory. Each fallen foe, each conquered position, each act of heroism carried both reward and consequence. The Myrmidons, though inspired by their leader, were witnesses to the human toll of war, the sorrow, exhaustion, and grief that accompanied every battle. Yet Achilles pressed on, driven not only by personal ambition, but by a desire to secure a legacy that would echo through time, immortalized in song, story, and memory. The tension reached its peak when a sudden counterattack by the Trojans forced Achilles into the thick of combat, testing both skill and endurance. Spears flew like arrows of fire, shields clashed, and the cries of warriors mingled with the roar of the wind. Achilles, moving with unparalleled swiftness and precision, struck down adversaries in a storm of calculated fury. His strategy, guided by both instinct and divine counsel, allowed him to overcome the numerical advantage of the Trojans. Yet even in victory, he recognized the fragile nature of life, glory, and the inexorable approach of fate. As night fell, the battlefield was littered with the exhausted, the wounded, and the fallen. Fires flickered across the plains, casting long shadows and illuminating the relentless devastation of war. Achilles, standing amid the aftermath, contemplated the inevitable, that every triumph, every act of courage, brought him closer to the destiny that awaited. Patroclus remained near, offering counsel and support, grounding the hero in humanity even as the currents of fate and glory swept him forward. The story of Achilles, though already legendary, continued to unfold with intensity, each moment a step toward the final chapters of war, vengeance, and immortal renown. The echoes of battle, the whispers of the gods, and the heavy weight of prophecy converged upon him as he prepared for the days to come. Every movement, every decision, every strike of sword and shield carried the significance of destiny, and Achilles, aware yet undaunted, embraced the path set before him. The war was far from over, but the legend of the greatest Greek hero continued to grow unstoppable, unyielding, and inexorably bound to both glory and mortality. This is Chapter 9, heightening the tension, exploring Achilles' reflection on glory and mortality, and moving toward the climactic events leading to his eventual fate. I can continue with Chapter 10, where Achilles' story moves into the events surrounding his mortal vulnerability and the critical turning points of the Trojan War. The plains outside Troy lay scorched and scarred, a testament to the relentless fury of war. Achilles, whose name had become synonymous with invincibility and wrath, moved among the Myrmidons like a force of nature, his presence shaping the course of every battle. Yet even the greatest hero could not escape the weight of mortality, and the prophecy that had haunted him since birth pressed closer with every dawn. The shadow of fate loomed, a reminder that glory was inseparable from danger, and that each triumph carried with it both honor and peril. The Greeks pressed their advantage, emboldened by Achilles' unparalleled skill and the victory over Hector. Yet the Trojans, though diminished in morale and number, remained defiant. Their courage fueled by vengeance and the subtle whispers of Apollo, ambushes, feints, and desperate sallies challenged the Greeks at every turn, testing both strategy and endurance. Achilles, aware of these tactics, moved with a combination of instinct and foresight, striking with precision and speed that left enemies reeling. Each encounter further cemented his legend, yet each victory also reminded him that mortality lingered even for the mightiest hero. Patroclus, ever at Achilles' side, continued to temper the hero's wrath and remind him of the humanity that accompanied greatness. Their bond, forged through childhood and strengthened in the fires of war, allowed Achilles to balance fury with prudence, ensuring that the pursuit of glory did not blind him to the cost of life and loyalty. Patroclus' presence became a lifeline, a reminder that even the most extraordinary heroes require counsel, compassion, and connection to navigate both mortal and divine currents. The god's influence grew more pronounced as the siege intensified. Athena, guiding Achilles with subtle counsel, provided insight into Trojan defenses and revealed weaknesses that mortal strategy alone could not discern. Apollo, grieving Hector's death and incensed at Achilles' wrath, inspired the Trojans to resist with renewed vigor, ensuring that victory would never come easily. Zeus, observing from the heights of Olympus, maintained balance, allowing mortal courage and divine intervention to intertwine in ways that shaped both the hero's destiny and the course of history. Amidst the battles, Achilles reflected on his own mortality, aware that the prophecy his mother had revealed the inevitability of an early death. Despite immortal renown loomed ever nearer. Each skirmish, each arrow, each close call on the battlefield was a reminder that even invincibility had limits. Yet he pressed onward, driven by the inexorable desire for glory, honor, and the immortal legacy that awaited those who dared to confront both fate and formidable adversaries. His courage, sharpened by reflection and tempered by loyalty to Patroclus, became both shield and weapon, guiding him through the trials that continued to define the war. In a critical moment of the siege, Achilles led a decisive assault on the outer walls of Troy. Combining brute strength with strategy, the Myrmidons, inspired by his unyielding determination, struck with precision, breaking the city's outer defenses and sending shockwaves of fear throughout the Trojan ranks. Yet even as the Greeks gained ground, Achilles remained vigilant, knowing that the war's end was not yet written and that danger lingered in unexpected forms. The battlefield, scarred by blood and fire, became a proving ground not only for heroism but for wisdom, foresight, and the delicate balance between pride and prudence. As twilight fell, casting long shadows across the plains, Achilles paused to reflect on the journey that had brought him here. Every battle, every fallen foe, every victory carried both triumph and consequence, the weight of prophecy, the whispers of the gods, and the enduring presence of fate pressed upon him, yet he remained resolute. Patroclus stood beside him, a steadfast reminder of loyalty, humanity, and the bonds that make even the mightiest heroes mortal. The stage was set for the final chapters of the war, where glory, vengeance, and destiny would converge in ways that would immortalize Achilles' name forever. The night air carried the scent of smoke, sweat, and blood, a reminder of both sacrifice and victory. Achilles, standing atop a ridge with the Myrmidons at his back, gazed upon the city of Troy, knowing that the trials yet to come would demand every ounce of courage, skill, and resolve. The hero's path, though fraught with peril, was guided by both destiny and determination, and the echoes of his deeds would resonate across time, a legacy of glory, mortality, and the eternal struggle between man and fate. The war had raged for years, each day leaving its mark on both the Greeks and the Trojans. The plains outside Troy were littered with the echoes of battles fought, the cries of the fallen, and the silent weight of destiny. Achilles, whose name had become legendary, knew that the time foretold by prophecy was drawing near. His unmatched skill and fury on the battlefield had shaped the course of the war. Yet even he could not escape the inevitability of mortality. The knowledge of his fate pressed upon him, mingling with the relentless drive for glory that had defined every step of his journey. The Myrmidons remained loyal, unwavering in the presence of their hero. Each man, seasoned by countless battles, understood both the power and the vulnerability of Achilles, Patroclus, the steadfast companion, continued to temper the hero's wrath and provide counsel, a grounding presence in the storm of war. Together, they faced the relentless assaults of the Trojans who, though weakened by grief and loss, fought with desperate courage inspired by vengeance, hope, and the whispers of the gods. Every clash of sword and shield, every strategy executed or countered, carried the weight of destiny and the promise of immortal renown. As the Greeks pressed the siege closer to Troy's heart, the air became thick with tension. Every step, every maneuver was shadowed by the presence of unseen forces. Athena guided Achilles with subtle precision, shaping his strategy and ensuring that mortal action remained aligned with divine will. Apollo, grieving and enraged by Hector's death, inspired moments of resistance among the Trojans, sending arrows of vengeance and courage alike. Zeus watched from Olympus, balancing mortal choice and divine influence. Knowing that the threads of fate were drawing Achilles inexorably toward the climax of his story, it was during one fateful engagement that the prophecy fulfilled itself. Paris, guided by Apollo, released the arrow that would change everything. The weapon, swift and unerring, struck Achilles in the heel, the only vulnerable part of the hero's body. Pain and shock coursed through him, a stark reminder that even the greatest of mortals could be undone. The battlefield fell into a tense silence as the realization spread among both Greeks and Trojans. The mighty Achilles had been struck, and the end of a legend was imminent. Patroclus rushed to his side, offering comfort and aid. Yet even the bond of friendship and loyalty could not reverse the tide of fate. Achilles' final moments were a blend of fury, reflection, and acceptance. His mind raced through the years of triumph, the countless battles fought, and the enduring bonds that had defined his life. He understood that glory had been achieved, that his deeds would echo across time. Yet mortality had claimed him as it had all mortals, even those touched by the favor of gods. The Myrmidons mourned silently, knowing that their hero, their invincible leader, had fallen. Yet the fire of his legend would never fade. The Greeks, despite their grief, pressed forward with renewed resolve. Achilles' death became both a rallying point and a moment of profound reflection, reminding all that the price of war and the pursuit of glory was measured in both life and death. The Trojans, though, victorious in witnessing the fall of a hero, could not undo the devastation that had been wrought upon their city, nor could they erase the legacy of the man who had shaped the war with unmatched courage and skill. In the days that followed, Hector's body was avenged, and the final strategies of war unfolded with renewed intensity. Yet throughout all, the memory of Achilles remained, a symbol of mortal heroism touched by divine favor, a warrior whose name would be sung for generations, whose deeds would be immortalized in tales, songs, and the hearts of men. His legacy endured in every battle fought, every strategy executed, and every act of courage inspired by his presence, a reminder that even in death, greatness lives on. And so, the story of Achilles concluded, a hero whose life intertwined mortal courage, divine influence, and the inexorable threads of destiny. He had lived a life defined by glory, honor, and the pursuit of eternal renown, and though his mortal form had fallen, his name would echo forever through history. The plains of Troy, scarred by war and haunted by memory, bore witness to both the end of a hero and the timeless nature of legend, a testament to the enduring power of courage, loyalty, and fate.